Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Third Culture Convos podcast. I am Majid here with Rashed. We are
Hi.
Ramadan Mubarak. Number one, you can hear the noise outside. That's because of Ramadan.
Yeah.
Ramadan Mubarak, bro.
Ramadan Kareem, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, man. How are you? Are you fasting?
Oh wow, the questions they start right away. It's like boom, rapid fire, boom. Okay, so a little background story. The short answer to that question is no. The long-winded answer to that question is yes, I used to. I cannot remember the last time I actually fasted. I think it was probably university days. So I graduated in 2009. I must have tried a couple of times after that, but I would say no because 2010 is when I started flying. And that's when I said, I ain't fasting while I'm flying. And then it turned into, I'm not fasting at all. And that causes huge debates amongst certain family members of mine. And,
Your
and
reaction was
friends.
very telling, right? Your reaction just being asked that is almost like a judgment call, even though it shouldn't be. Like what whether you fast or
Well,
not
it's
is a neutral question. Like it has no impact on me, but yet Muslims seem to be very offended when the other person lives their life, if you will.
No, it's true. So like people, it's always the burning question. When are the Ramadan is on the way or when it's started and you haven't spoken to someone yet and it's already started. And you know, all the niceties, the salutations, the Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem, you know, all that kind of stuff happens. Oh, are you fasting? And it's just like, why do we have to ask these questions? Um, and I think a lot of it is curiosity. I think a part of it is people are trying to gauge what their personal decision would be based on someone else that they know. And it could be a situation where it's like, oh, you know, this person, I have a lot of respect for this person. So let's say, for example, and they might gauge what they might try and do themselves based on that answer. So, and I say this from experience because I've had friends over the years where they're like, "Oh, are you fasting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I am." Back in the day when I did, and then when I stopped, and then certain people didn't know that I had stopped. They're like, "Wait, what? What?" Like for them, it's like an existential crisis. What, you're not fasting out of all the people that I know? Because the hopes always like I was always had the personal intrigue when it came to religious studies in general, all that kind of stuff. But I've always had this appearance of like being one of the most religious, one of the most pious people throughout different groups of circles that I have.
For the
Um,
audience who's listening, this is true. Rashid was when we used to go for Friday prayer. I used to go primarily because Rashid used to go, and so there was a nice little bit of socialization, and we talk, and it was that once a week. But it was because Rashid was going. I was like, you know what? Like, let's just go. Let's get it over with.
See,
Whatever.
the funny thing too, on the flip side, a lot of it was I was still doing certain things to keep up that appearance, whereas on the inside, I was like, I don't want to do this. So like you never know what someone's personal struggle is. But um, in the vein of this type of topic is I see there's similarities between what you could call a CNE Christian, Christmas and Easter Christian, and what I have dubbed RMs, Ramadan Muslims. So you have those who basically who do nothing all year round. So like I know a lot of people who are like going to Catholic school, a lot of Catholic people who basically only cared about anything religiously based during Christmas and Easter. So they became really cognizant and hardcore about doing certain things for those holidays. And then I find that it's the same type of deal when it comes to Ramadan with Muslims. So you can live the entire year doing absolutely nothing when it comes to religious duties and responsibilities and not give a flying rat's ass. But the moment Ramadan comes around, all of a sudden you're like, oh my, I need to pray. I have to restart praying. One, I have to make sure that I wake up for suhoor and all that stuff. I have to make sure that, you know, everything's done correctly. But meanwhile, in their lives, they're like for example, there could be a person who, like, let's just say, steady girlfriend, does their thing with the girlfriend all year round, goes to clubs, bars, and gets their thing on, quote unquote. But the moment Ramadan comes around, oh babe, I can't see you this entire month. What? All of a sudden, this entire month, like, what about the other 11 months for the year?
It's not just that they start doing the actions, I find, but there's this forced 1+1 combo that they also have to now preach. In for 1 month, they become Yani the number one cheerleader. And I find that kind of almost offensive. Like, sure, you know what? If you want to pray and fast and do it quietly and do it for yourself, right? You don't need to then and also, like, what about the other 11 months? That's the main point, is just what about the
Mm-hmm.
other 11 months? And it is, what do you think? Like, do you consider this superficiality? Because there is a certain brand of superficialness to it. Like, why is it
So,
every year? So they'll, like, Muslims will say, for Ramadan Mubarak, they'll send a whole nice greeting on WhatsApp or on their Facebook about how you need to persevere and these really strong words, but they won't actually pay attention. Reflection. This is a month of reflection. Nobody seems to actually reflect, because if you did reflect, what you're saying in the other 11 months, you wouldn't be uh, jahil.
um, yeah, so that's one side of the coin, okay? Because I see two sides of the same coin here, and the coin and the coin being religiosity, basically. So you have the one side that we're talking about, where the people who become religious all of a sudden for the one time a year. The other side of the coin, it's for me, there's actually a genuineness to it as well. I feel like. So I do feel like there are those who are actually genuinely concerned about, um, when it comes to like dawah, like someone who wants to be a cheerleader, as you say, someone who's being a da'i in this kind of situation, where they're trying to, if they're generally trying to help someone, like if they see someone is struggling with their lives, and it could be another fellow Muslim where it's just like they're not doing so well religiously speaking, and they want to try and help them in a certain way. But like, there's a way to help the person. You don't help the person by judging the person. You help the person by being a shoulder to lean on, someone to like bounce ideas off of, that kind of, those type of things. Somebody you can talk to, somebody you can confide in without judgment. See, when it comes to that kind of situation, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not saying that people shouldn't try and like, quote unquote, cheerlead, but I feel like the nature of the cheerleading has to be more than just being judgmental, and all of a sudden you're being a cheerleader for the one time of the year, whereas someone who generally is all the time like trying to help someone out, I think that's very beneficial. And
I
then
think the cheerleading, by the way, I just want to add here, I think the cheerleading, you earn that through your actions, right? You have to put in 5 years, 12 months in a year, 5 years in a row of solid actions. And that doesn't mean religious actions necessarily, that, oh, I did 5 prayers a day. That means the non-religious stuff, actually, right? Like,
yeah.
this is what for me, I find is, the more I look at these religious people, the more it's like, how come you don't pay attention this much to the non-religious aspect of life? So I, like, in Pakistan, I often say, I've come to this one saying that Pakistanis love doing the Islamic thing, but not the Islamic way.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they'll go to Friday prayer, they'll do the thing, but they'll illegally park and make it a problem, block traffic for someone else while going to pray. So that, like, and
Or
I,
drive
in
down the
my,
wrong side of the road and honk at you.
or right, like, all sorts on Friday, man, people go like, this is the thing, is I've noticed that, like, they're insistent on doing the action, but the pre-action almost is completely, or the post action is you're back to normal. And like that doesn't, for me, that doesn't compute. Like, you think God's not watching this if you're going according to that belief? I think he'll ask you even more so that, like, what was the point in the prayer if you were going to bring taklif or a problem to somebody before or after that prayer?
I know, I know, and it's not even only in Pakistan. It's all over. It's all over. Like, same thing here. Like when we used to go to Hard House, for example, for Friday prayer at U of T. Like you'd see people doing silly things out in the hallway afterwards, type of thing as well. But and I just don't. It's more like it's just accepted. It's known. This is going to happen. You know that people are going to do these certain things, but it doesn't change. It's almost like it's ingrained in how people's lives have been lived for a certain amount of time. But at the same time, it's we're talking about, to a certain extent, post-colonialism. Whatever type of basis that Pakistan would have had as a society, as a country when it was formed. For some time, yes. I mean, your parents' generation, even just before, it probably had it was probably better organized than how it is now. And then the Brits leave and things go to crap. But then you have generations living in that crap. So what we're criticizing becomes their norm. Like they know nothing else, type of thing. And
100%.
so for
This
us,
is there's a big culture clash here for me. Whenever I'm here, I'm used to speaking out. In America, I'm full Karen mode, and I'm not going to change who I am over here. I will hold you to the same standard as around the world, because I've lived in different places around the world, and they're not used to people standing and speaking up and saying, no, this is not right. In fact, I just got into an argument yesterday, and I told them that, like, it's not just the one guy who made the problem. What's really weird is the fact that all of you guys watched this guy create a problem and none of you said anything. That's what saddens me the most.
That reminds me of something that was quite disturbing, actually, and it's not related to anything Ramadan-like, but there was a video that I saw recently on Twitter.
I just saw
in
it.
Queens, the one in Queens, where it was so basically there was an argument over a parking spot on the street in Queens. And there's this one guy, and he basically was beaten the crap out of by this guy and this girl in the middle of the street. Like they were stabbing the dude and hitting him with a baseball bat. Like they knocked him unconscious, but it was over a stupid parking spot. Now the thing about this is that we saw the video because someone was videotaping it from their apartment up top, and there were bystanders, people yelling at them, stop, stop. But in that kind of situation, who's going to step in? It's a violent situation where someone has a shank and they're stabbing the dude, kicking him in the face, and there's a baseball bat. Whereas in this kind of situation, for example, that you're talking about, I don't know if it was physical or not, or there's any kind of violence, but there are situations where, you can just not stand around and let it happen and be like, hey, man, like, what are you doing? You're parking the wrong way. Like, dude, come on. Like, and eventually if it gets to the point where it's multiple people being like, come on, man, smarten up, they might smarten up. I want to go back to another point quickly. And so there's something else I can't argue against. And I know quite a few people who are actually doing this particular thing this year for Ramadan. And it's for one of them in particular, it's been like a couple of years of a process of not festering in a bad way, but just kind of, it's been going around in their mind for some time about becoming more religiously aware and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things they often describe Ramadan as being, for those who know nothing about Ramadan who are listening, there are various things that people are told, at least the benefits of Ramadan, in terms like the fasting itself being healthy for your body in one sense, to help it flush out toxins that's been building up for the entire year, type of thing. But the other things are religious piety, religiosity, self-discipline, patience, becoming more religiously aware, being more aware of those who are less fortunate, and having more empathy for these people, along with the zakat that you pay, et cetera, et cetera. I have no issue if someone is not really religious all year round, but then they use these type of goals, or use Ramadan to try and achieve these type of goals for the purpose of as a springboard for the rest of the year. But they're doing it on a personal level. They're not going around to people and saying, "Oh, look at me!" Like they're not championing their look. I'm such a pious person now, hat type of thing. They're actually doing it for their own personal purpose. And you know what? Sometimes you won't even know unless you pay attention to what they're doing now, or if they just tell you. That I can't argue against that, because in the end, the reality is Ramadan has two purposes in a sense. Like there's the personal purpose and there's a social purpose. So the personal purpose is the biggest jihad of it all, where it's like you doing this all for your own personal reasons. Like it's tough. You're fasting from sunrise to sundown. Like it's especially doing it in a society where it's not Muslim based, and you're like, oh, everyone else is eating and drinking, and I can't do anything. But I think it's a noble cause for a personal decision to be made that way for a personal purpose. But if you're doing that for the personal purpose, at that point, even still, like don't turn it and be like, well, why don't you just do it too? Because you should just do it because I'm doing it and I wasn't doing it for how many years type of thing. And I've seen people do that as well. Keep it personal. That's fine with me. And obviously the side of things is the social aspect of it. But
I'm with you 100%. This is the main thing, right? If you're doing it for your personal reason and you're using it almost as a catalyst for the rest of the year, like that's the purpose of the month, is to awaken your spirit and your soul that has been dead or like decaying for the last 11 months. That is the one of the main points, right? The inner like thing of like waking it up and get it going. But then you
yeah,
have, like, I find too often, I think 99% of people, they come in with the best of intent, 100% come in with the best of intentions, that like this time I'm going to change. And we're all addicts in some ways. Even our lifestyle is
mm-hmm.
addictive, right? Like even just not praying can be addictive sometimes because you're just used to not praying. So when you break that, you do routine failing, and you break that, and you're like, okay, this month, everybody around me is praying. It's the cool thing to do for a month. Let me do it. Uh, if you can continue that for the next 11 months, that's where you impress me. And that's where you're like, I'm like, yes, like this person, they went in and God will give them the reward. But I find 99%. Go ahead.
I have a question, because one of the people that I'm mentioning, you know, they're like, I still haven't established 5 times a day praying, and I'm like, you've just started doing this in the past 6 months. And so the question for me is like, how many people do you actually think throughout the history of Islamic civilization and today actually maintain the 5 prayers on a daily basis? I know there's a lot of people who do. There's a certain generation that would have, but like apart from that, like I can't imagine there's a large percentage of people that actually do it on a continuous basis daily, every 5 prayer.
This is where it gets tricky now, because I think there's a lot of people. I can tell you there's a lot of people who do the 5 prayers, but they, again, it's that addictive. They're just used to it. That's their lifestyle. So they just do it robotically. The whole point of the 5 prayers almost gets lost in them. It does get lost in them because they're just doing mechanisms and time and routine. They're not actually
Right.
involved in the prayer. They're not literally, it's you, they're just doing the actions. They're not actually the mental part. They're doing the physical. They're not
Yeah,
mentally there. They're not
because that happened to me.
you
Yeah.
start just, yeah, you start just becoming like, I'm just doing this for. There was a point of about Friday prayers where I was just going to Friday prayer over here because I'm scared that like my upstairs neighbor will stitch to my parents and be like, yo, your son, he started skipping Fridays. There was a decent 6 months where I was just going robotically just to avoid the snitch.
And now,
Now I go because I want to go. Same with the fasting. I'm fasting this time more out of this person. I just want to do it to do it more than like I'm not advertising it. In fact, I told my parents I don't think I'm going to be doing it, but I'm like trying to do it because I want to maintain a discipline more than like I'm using the religious thing more as a personal like
but
get productive.
what was their reaction when you said, I don't know if I'm going to do it?
my relationship with my Lord is very well known in my household, and it's a very Gemini relationship where it can be on or off very quickly. So they're used to me wavering. This is nothing new. For the last 10 years now, I've had a very open debate
Mm,
about even the main question, even like if God, like all these questions. If you want me to tell you, does God exist? We started with that one, but that one I don't. My heart's not even in that one because I can't deny the Creator. Having done my own analysis, I can't deny that. So I never took that one too serious. After that, though, is where it gets really tricky. Like the whole, like, man, the whole, it's the usual, like, first year philosophy, religion philosophy. Like, why do bad things happen to good people? Why would,
right.
evil eye, for example, the evil eye? Why wouldn't God protect you against somebody with bad intentions? That boggles my mind that, like, an innocent person, the Count of Monte Cristo, by the way, is totally about the evil eye, right? Like, it was
Mm,
the Edmond Dante or whatever his name is. He's coming up in life. He got the girl. The guy doesn't like the fact that he got the girl. Out of pure jealousy, he takes him and sends him to prison. It's a pure evil eye kind of thing. Why wouldn't, like, there be an intervention and be like, no, like, this guy, like, let him live his life and you live your life, right? Like, how do you
mhm,
allow for the negative, but you don't, there's no defense. You're allowing them to attack without, like, and you tell
mhm.
me that no, but there is Aitel Kursi and that's a defense. But I'm telling you, the person, Edmond Dante, he said Aitel Kursi 5 times a day and it still happened to him. Now what?
So, like, I asked the question because, like, for me, I was like the imam of the family, I guess you can say. So, like, when I like stopped doing stuff, that like shattered my father, and he still hasn't. I think he's given up now. But no, there's been the question, like the past 2 years especially. It's been the question: Are you fasting? No. Why aren't you fasting? Because I don't want to. I don't feel it. If I don't feel it, I'm just starving myself. If I'm not genuine in actually wanting to do this practice, I'm not benefiting myself at all. And on top of that, like, oh, you don't pray 5 times a day anymore. No, I don't. Why not? Because I don't feel it. And I feel like if I'm not doing these things with genuine intentions, I'm lying to myself and I'm lying to God, essentially. And again, God knows best. God knows everything. God knows what my intention is. And if I'm just doing it as a robot, which kind of led to me stopping praying many years ago, um, then why am I doing it? Like, I'm not going to lie. There are times where I'd be sitting around in my hotel room, let's say, for example, on a layover. I haven't done it, but I'd be like, I would actually get the urge to pray. But then my critical thought comes in and says, but why? Like, instead of just going and doing it, I question, why am I getting this urge? Why am I doing it now? Type of thing. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it will be a bad thing if I got up and if I just did it. But my brain's become too critical. But the thing is that um, a part of the one of the questions that was asked to you, yeah. So last year this happened. My dad's like, we're talking about things like, and he looks at me and he's like, "Do you believe in God anymore?" And I said, "It's none of your business. It's my business, what I believe, and I don't need to explain it to you or anyone else." And the thing is, I had that answer because he's very judgmental in what he asks. Whereas with my mom, I'll have the conversation openly with my mom, and she's very simple when it comes to these type of things. She's basically like, if you don't believe it, you don't believe it. Do what you like. You have to believe it, and that comes from her mother. Thankfully,
Mine
she's
is
a
the
lot more.
opposite relationship. My dad's the cool one, and my mom's the, like, yo, no, like, we're not discussing this. You're doing it.
Really. So that's rare.
You think? I don't know. I think that's
I
normal. No,
usually I find it's the
like
father
the
that
dad's the
tends to
cool
be
one.
more. No, I find that from my experiences with people that I know that it's the father who's the more strict one, and the mom's like, it's just let it be, and you'll get through it. But I could be wrong. I'm
Like
curious.
this,
Actually, Simo's not
yeah,
in this
yeah.
one. Wasim's not in,
I
but I
wouldn't
would
mind a
curious to see
survey.
what.
We need that third vote. Yeah, yeah. We need that.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe I'm completely wrong in this whole type of thing. Actually, come to think of it, just a few other people that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, where the father's the cool one, like their father is the cool one, and the mom's like the one that's like, no, Maybe I'm the
Yeah, like
exception.
yes, I really, when you said it, I was like, really? Your dad's the one? Because it's usually like I've always had it the opposite. The dad's the one who can tell. The mom's the one who you're like, man, like no, no, just no.
Huh.
Because
Interesting.
moms generally have a highway or my way or the highway policy. Generally, lifelong my way or the highway. Whereas dads are much, they're like dudes, right? They're just like whatever. Like this is what I can tell you. This is what I think is best, and then hands off policy.
Well, generally,
It's up to you.
let's not beat around the bush as well. When we talk about the dudes in general, they're the ones that had to conform from a non-religious to a religious lifestyle. Generally speaking, when they end up getting married, um, that's why they always look for the good Muslim
The
woman because
sacrifices, the
they need the
sacrifices.
guidance. Exactly. Oh God.
um, So by the way, I didn't fast that much last year. I kind of lied to everybody and said I was, but I was very on and off about it. Which is why this year I wanted to. And I would tell you, by the way, in terms of prayer, I would definitely still advocate, even though I don't pray. I would definitely, if you have that feeling, even for a split
Hmm.
second, I would definitely lean into it because prayer is not, this is the thing, it's not an intellectual exercise. It's an exercise not for the mind but for the spirit, for the soul, like really. And that sukoon and that calmness you feel right after prayer, that like 30-second, uh you can't replicate that. So I would just, again, I don't pray, so you can call me what you want, but I would definitely recommend that it's not a critical thought. You shouldn't be analyzing the action. Just do the action, and then afterwards, if afterwards you then think about, you critically analyze the action as opposed to before.
Hmm.
This ain't
I
Minority
just want to
Report.
make I just want to insert a little caveat here for people, for those listening. We are no way, shape, or form in any of these episodes trying to make it look like that we are like model Muslims when it comes to anything.
I hope they realize
Okay.
that by like this
Because
conversation.
I think there might be some people who are like, these guys are a bunch of hypocrites, and it's like, we are not in any way claiming to live an Islamic lifestyle every day in our lives. We're not doing that at all. Our whole purpose of these conversations is to be like, there's a lot of people who are in the same boat as us, who are just as confused, but don't have the opportunity to be able to express it. And at least what we're doing is we're basically giving a voice to people who don't necessarily have this opportunity and can understand that, oh shit, there's a lot of people like me that I can relate to, um, and can feel just as I don't want to say as garbage, but like, just as
Confused or
confused as not,
conflicted,
I mean, I wouldn't,
confused.
yeah, there's a lot of those things, conflicted, confused, unsure, these type of things.
That's
Now, who
your
knows?
like
Maybe the
that's
future
the
is going to change,
Catholic
but
guilt complex that kicks in for you specifically. Again, that like,
absolutely,
should I feel bad about this?
absolutely.
That's your like the Catholic bringing. That's just the
Hmm.
like.
Should I feel bad about potentially misleading people? Because that's not my intention. The Catholic guilt is strong with this one.
But yeah, man, it's just I don't know. What can I tell you? It's. By the way, I looked at this thing. So just completely off topic again, related to what you had talked about in terms of the parking space. I was just
Hmm.
checking on the thing. There was one incident in Vancouver that involved a Sikh man. Apparently, he got stabbed randomly, and there was another video I saw that's going around on Twitter, I think, where a guy was stabbed outside a Starbucks, and there's another guy like the guy filming it runs over to the Starbucks. The stabbing has happened. You can see all the blood on the street. The guy who stabbed him continues to walk into the Starbucks, and there's a guy outside just drinking his coffee. Like a guy got stabbed in
Where was
front of
this
him
one?
in Toronto. The Starbucks one
Yeah,
is, or the coffee shop is
yeah.
Toronto. And even the
I'm not
Vancouver one
surprised.
apparently also happened outside a coffee shop. So, like, but I don't know if it was a Starbucks. The Toronto one, like, the logo's there and everything. But it's just the amount of when you see the guy drinking his coffee and there's all blood and there's like, and he's just going about his day. that's one of those moments where, like, back in the day, I feel like, when Trump talks about like America was great, or like the Canadian far right talks about when Canada was great, that's one of those moments
Mm-hmm.
where I do feel like there was a time where people would have been like, yo, you can't just stab a man in broad daylight at a coffee shop in the front entrance and you're just sitting there drinking a coffee. Either you'd freak out and run away. I understand that reaction, or you'd get involved. I understand that reaction. I don't understand the apathetic, indifferent reaction that literally a
Mm-hmm.
violent crime is happening next to me and I'm busy sipping my coffee. Again, I'm giving you that leeway of running away too. I'm telling you, like, run.
Yeah. It's like the epitome of I don't give an F has like the I don't give an F meter has gotten so high that things happen and people don't even react.
Like that cell phone, there's that effect about it where, like, that woman back in the 70s or whatever, she was abused and like 40, 30 people just watched. So like maybe again that like whole Trump make America great again thing, that was never the case because this thing happened in the 70s. There is a term for this where people just watch the crime happen and don't do
Mm-hmm.
anything. They're just watching the crime. That's it. And there is that Black Mirror episode where they're filming because that woman, she films something and then she wakes up in a dystopian village where everyone just keeps following her and filming her. So like there has been
Oh,
commentary
I didn't
about
watch
this.
that one.
It's a cool one. It's from the earlier seasons, maybe two or three, season two or three, maybe.
The last episode I recall watching from Black Mirror was the one where the people basically lived and worked the stationary bicycle one. That's the last one that I remember watching. So that's like a long time ago. That's like
Yeah,
many
yeah,
episodes back.
it's a good show. It's there were some solid episodes after that. There were some weak ones in my opinion after that too. But it's worth like finishing up. Why not? They do have some interesting talks about technology and the effects of technology, and we're seeing it again. That video where the guy's just drinking his
Yeah.
coffee, he don't care. He's just enjoying his day, and a guy's got stabbed in front of him. I just found that so weird, and I complain about people
Oh,
here. So like, it's the same thing in Canada, which is why I can live here, by the way, very easily.
well, there was that other video that I saw recently in New York City on the subway, and basically it was like a group of Latinos, basically Latino kids, and they basically grabbed and beat the crap out of this black kid, and and the biggest problem too with this is that like I'm not saying, like his disability is a bad thing. I'm just saying the fact is that he was a very vulnerable person because he also was autistic. So like you can visibly see in the video that he has social interaction issues, that obviously he'd have to work through for whatever counseling and treatment that he has for his condition, right? And so they just basically grabbed him, and he tried to get away a few times, but they ended up grabbing him again and beat the crap out of him. And what's happening? There's a huge crowd of people. It's midday on the New York subway, so it's like, there's a lot of people, and all there is a bunch of people filming and getting out of their way because they don't want to get hit as well, as opposed to like trying to do anything about it. Now I get it, you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe one of the people has a knife, they're going to shank you, whatever it is. But it's like everyone just gets out of the way and lets it happen, and records it and posts it to their TikTok or their Twitter or whatever it is, instead of actually doing anything to help the kid.
And these this
No, I get
TikTok,
it. I
yeah.
mean, if I'm there and I see 5 people going after one guy, what am I going to do? But if you have everyone doing that same thing, there's no one who's going to step in. Whereas if you have 6 people out of the bystanders going in, now you're outnumbering the 5. At least you can help. You can do something about it. And the biggest problem too is that it's not like you have police or anyone patrolling these areas. So it's not like there's any type of enforcement, quote unquote, there to help the person who's in need. So by the time they show up, they're gone. What's been done is done. It's very frustrating. So Toronto, for example, recently has had that rash of attacks on the TTC, people being pushed on the subway tracks, people being attacked on buses and all that kind of stuff. And for some time, they had extra police force patrolling certain areas of the TTC that were trouble zones on the subway and bus routes and all that kind of stuff. And recently they stopped it and they said, we're going to provide we're going to provide self-defense classes for people to be able to defend themselves on the TTC. And I'm like, this is just indicative of a wider societal problem in Toronto in general. If you have to be doing this, like Toronto sounds like it's turning into New York of the 80s.
The Warriors. Yeah.
Like it's like
It sounds like it really,
that?
from the outside looking in, it really sometimes sounds like what the hell is going on there. It's not the same city I was in back in the day. It really,
so
like,
I
it's
asked friends of
become...
mine what's going on, and a lot of them say that due to COVID, funding for mental health programs has been slashed, and it's not that they don't have the space, they don't have the funding to keep people in mental health facilities anymore, so they're just being freed onto the street. And so those who would have treatments or medications and all that kind of stuff are probably going without and are doing whatever that they do. Not to say that, everyone else mental health issues is violent. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that people who need help and assistance are not getting it anymore because the government's not providing it when it's their responsibility to be providing it. And whatever help and assistance they had before to help them mitigate whatever reactions they have based on, the condition that they have is now just, it's not being mitigated. And instead it's just like happening out front in society now. And people are just like, well, I don't know what to do.
Anytime your solution to violence is more violence, self-defense is a form of violence, right? It's like defensive violence, if you will. Anytime your solution is violence on violence, I don't think that's a winning strategy. Historically, it's amazing how often we keep trying the same strategies and then pretend like they should be working.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, with that, whatever. Everybody, Ramadan Kareem, stay safe.
Ramadan
stay
Kareem.
Fasting if you're fasting.
Happy fasting. Happy fasting. Remember, don't let it get to you. It's all about patience.
Patience, perseverance, all the P's, I guess. For Rashed, I'm Majid. We are the Third Culture Convos podcast. Tune in next time, and thank you for this time. Peace out.
Bye, guys.